out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 115th episode of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, brought to you by me, your host, the Wolf Mac B, from Amsterdam. Not London anymore, I have moved. And I will be joined, as always, by my partner in crime from the east coast of the U.S., Gary Action Jackson, my old friend. And we hope that you listened to last week's show on U2's War, which is soon celebrating its 40th anniversary. Big hits like New Year's Day, Sunday Bloody Sunday, Two Hearts. Great album. It's the one that really set them up for the mega superstardom, world-conquering band that they would become. And a little help thanks to MTV for that Sunday Bloody Sunday live at Red Rocks. Really kind of helped catapult them into the stratosphere. So we hope that you listen to that. This week, we're going down the heavy metal route. And again, as we always do on this show, we talk about bands. Sometimes bands make it big in the US, but they don't make it big in the UK. Sometimes they make it big in the UK, but they don't make it big in the US for whatever reason. And this is kind of the story of a band that made it big in the US for a while, basically on the back of one song that was from a band that was really big in the UK, but didn't really make it big in the US. I'm talking about Quiet Riot. In 1983, they put out their album Mental Health, which had the single Come On Feel the Noise on it. It was a big hit. It was a top 10 hit, and it propelled the album to number one. The first ever heavy metal album that went to the number one on the Billboard chart. But Come On Feel the Noise was originally a Slade song that was a huge hit all around the world except America, certainly big in the UK and in Europe in 1973. For whatever reason, Slade did not hit it huge in America, but they were really big, and the lead singer, Noddy Holder, is kind of an icon of that glam era. You know, the big top hat with the mirrors on it. He was kind of a weird-looking dude, but he's an obvious entertainer. He was obviously having fun. And because Quiet Riot hadn't had much success, it was actually their third album. Their first two were made in the 70s and released only in Japan. They couldn't even really get American record distribution at that point. But they reformed with a new unit after Randy Rhoads had departed and gone to Ozzy Osbourne. And they made the Mental Health album, which included the Come On Feel the Noise single, a song the band really didn't have any interest in doing, but at the end of the day, they did it awfully well. And it helped them sell over 6 million copies of Mental Health in the US, I think about 10 million worldwide. But that's the real highlight on the album, okay? There's some great riffs on there. There's some great musicianship. Frankie Banali was a fantastic drummer, and he laid down some heavy beats. Rudy Sarzo is a great bass player. He's been in Ozzy Osbourne's band. He's been with Whitesnake. He's also a heck of a good guy. Carlos Cavazo was a really impressive guitar player who maybe didn't even know how good he was. But it's got to be tough when you're kind of filling in the footsteps of Randy Rhoads. The most interesting part of the band is their lead singer, Kevin Dubrow, who certainly knew how to be an entertainer, knew how to work the Sunset Strip, but was he a great singer? Did he write good lyrics? Well, we're going to talk about all that here as we get into the show. But first up, we have a little bit of business to talk about. As usual, we like to give shout-outs to Pantheon Podcasts, of which we are a proud member, about 100 different podcasts out there of all genres. There's something for everybody. And we like to give shout-outs to the folks who we've had on our show, or perhaps we've been on theirs, like Christy Alexander Hallberg of Rock is Lit, like Jay Scott at The Hook Rocks, like Paul Stevenson at Vintage Rock Pod and This Day Rocks, like the CEO, Christian Swain on Rock and Roll Archaeology, like Martin Popoff on History in 5 Songs, and like the Kiss Kings themselves, Tom and Zeus of the great Shout It Out Loud cast. And we want you to remember that we are sponsored by RareVinyl.com, which is a killer sponsor for a classic rock podcast, because they've got over 250,000 things in stock, folks. I'm talking records, LPs, CDs, singles, DVDs, posters, tour books, ticket stubs, all sorts of amazing artifacts and rock history available in their warehouses in the UK, but they ship all over the world. They have a 5-star rate, and they're wonderful people. And so if you're looking for something cool, you're looking for a first print, or you're looking for something in mint condition, go to rarevinyl.com or EIL.com. Use the code PODCAST. It'll save you 10%, maybe give you the opportunity to buy a little something extra, or at least knock off the shipping costs, especially if you got to ship to America. So please go check out rarevinyl.com, use code podcast, save yourself that 10%. back to Quiet Riot now. Yeah, in 1983, I was 10. Parents were worried about kids in the suburbs listening to heavy metal, that it was satanic or evil or something like that. And I don't think my mom was any different. But you have to understand the appeal of Come On Feel the Noise, the video, the look of the band, the sound of the guitar. It was huge, and it shot them to the top. I just don't think Quiet Riot, underneath all that, had what it took to become a really big-time band. Remember, in 1983, Metallica's first album is coming out, right? Slayer and Anthrax are not so far behind. So metal is going to be changing. This is kind of the end of an era. It's kind of the end of a glossy Sunset Strip kind of thing, although in the late 80s, you could say all those bands were kind of, the hair metal bands, they were all kind of that Sunset Strip era. Yeah, but they could play a little bit differently, and their lyrics were a little bit more grown up, let's just say. All I know is it was fun to talk to Jackson about this one. It was fun to revisit it, so let's go ahead and dive in for you here. We're listening to the first #1 heavy metal album in the history of the Billboard chart, and that's Quiet Riot's Metal Health, right here on The Wolf. Because before we get into the business at hand, though, Jackson, it seems like there's been a lot going on in music news. Just like there's been some really super iconic people like Jeff Beck and David Crosby dying. Mm-hmm. Lots of people trying to gear up for a big summer tours, and they're announcing different festivals and lineups and stuff like that. But I tell you one positive thing out of the news in rock and roll music that I saw was that John Fogerty finally got the rights to his songs back from his days back in CCR. And it's been like a 50-year fight where Saul Zaentz, who had owned the record company, but it was buddies with John's brother, took all his songs. I mean, I'm sure they signed them over to him when they didn't know what they were doing, but he was suing him for the longest time to get his songs back. Couldn't do it. And then finally, he's like, I got all my songs back, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm like, that, in this day and age where all the artists are selling their songs, like, fine, take them, make a lot of money off of them, do what you want, just give me a bunch of money and I'm done. He's like, I want my songs back. And he finally, after 5 decades, finally got them back. That was good news.
Yeah, when you talk about like what's the worst story in all of like music publishing, music history, it's got to be John Fogerty. He got just railroaded. I guess everything was legal. I guess he signed something that he really didn't know what he was doing, and the people that had it he said he went to because you mentioned his brother was involved with the guy who owned it. He went to like some kind of birthday party or something, and the guy through his brother, and the guy was like, "Yeah, you really got screwed on this, but what are you going to do?" I mean, it's a legal thing. I think at some point in time, he had part of it, but he signed all of it over to the dude because he would have to make like 50 more records or something to satisfy the contract. And he was like, I can't do this anymore. So he got out of it. The craziest thing, though, was he got sued by that guy for, I think it was Old Man Down the Road. And they said it was just like Run Through the Jungle. And the judge said, well, you can't rip yourself off. So you wrote both of those songs. You don't own them both, but you wrote them both. So it was just a long, just really nasty battle. So yeah, really to see that he got all of that back, because he wrote all of that himself. There wasn't like any kind of co-writing credit. Like that was his deal. So, and I know he said something too about how like his wife now, I think really turned him around. I think he was really, really angry for a lot of years, like really bitter about the whole thing.
As you would imagine.
Yeah, correct. She got him to kind of see, hey, if you take all of that out, you've really had kind of a great life. You had a great solo career. People still love you. But yeah, to see that he got it back now, that really is how it should have been all along.
And it's not that uncommon of a story that someone got screwed out of their song. So they signed something and they didn't really know what they were signing. And, Tom Petty's like, well, I thought it was for music books. I'm like, fine, I don't need the money from song books. I don't think that's going to sell that many anyway, And Kansas famously sided with Clive Davis. And he's like, yeah, I made all my money off publishing. And then one goes, he turns to the other and goes, what is publishing, right? Like, they don't even know what it is. The Stones got ripped off by Alan Klein all those years ago. I mean, look, a lot of people don't own their stuff or never did or signed something where they didn't realize what they were signing. And it's too bad. But he was kind of the public face of it. You're right. And the thing in the 80s where he was basically being sued for ripping off himself by Saul and, had to go to court and prove how he wrote them differently and stuff like that. It's just such ridiculous drama. And the other thing is, go listen to Creedence Clearwater's songs. You can't do that for 20, 30 minutes without a smile on your face. These are happy, upbeat rock and roll songs that sold, 120 million copies or something crazy like that back in the late 60s, early 70s. They were just huge. And I'm just glad that he got it. I hope he doesn't now just keel over, because sometimes when you've got a fight on your hands and you fight, and then finally win or lose, when it's over, some of that fight goes out of your system. But I hope that it means he does a summer tour and he goes out there and enjoys it, and everybody enjoys it, because he makes fun rock and roll. And now that he owns it again and will get paid for playing his own songs again, I just think that's great.
See, I wonder now too. Do you think he'll go back and re-release a whole bunch of this stuff, clean it up? I don't know. Try and. I mean, because you want to think of you want to think about positive, moving forward, but you don't want to think about all the money you left on the table all those years. So who knows? But yeah, definitely back to playing it live, and I don't know, maybe put out a live record. Who knows?
I don't know. I saw him live though in the last 10 years, and I'm like, this is fun. This is a blast. You go for the night. Sometimes it depends on the bands. If it's a heavy band, you want to hear, you want to hear the stuff that you grew up with, and you want to hear it note for note. And it's just loose and fun, and every song he plays, even his solo stuff that maybe wasn't quite as popular, every single song, and they're happy for the most part. So I'm just happy for him. That's just a win for the good guys right there. And I would listen to his albums back and forth. Okay, but that brings us to today's record, Jackson.
All right.
Now, when we noticed that Quiet Riot's Mental Health was turning 40 soon here, early in 1983, I'm like, okay, well, we've got to review that. That's huge. It's the first ever heavy metal record that went to #1 on the U.S. Come On, Feel the Noise was a huge, huge hit in the U.S. And Quiet Riot has a little bit of an interesting history, pre-Mental Health and a little bit post-Mental Health. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun show. And I can't wait, because summer of 83, man, that's when I was totally into MTV, and the Police were on, Duran Duran and Men at Work and Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be so much fun to go back and listen to this record. And I listened to the record, I'm like, how the fuck did this get to #1? I mean, I understand Come On, Feel the Noise was a big hit and a big cover, but the rest of the record, God damn, it's amazing there was ever another heavy metal record that went to #1 after this, man. Are you kidding me? What did you think when you listened to it again?
Well, okay. So it kind of boils down to they can't all be the White Album, right? So if you go into this thinking this is going to be something prolific, it's really not. But for a straight ahead rock and roll record, something that you put on and just kind of, I'm trying to think of who would have bought this in 83, like the kid that owned the Camaro and was in high school and was just going to rock out. It's really not, it's nothing fantastic. It's not going to change the world, but it's pretty straight ahead. And it definitely opened the door for everything that would come after that. All the hair metal, all the Sunset Strip bands. This was the roadmap to that. And for a rock record, it's not bad. It's not bad. As long as your expectations aren't too high.
But see, that's the thing. When you see first ever heavy metal to hit #1, not a Black Sabbath record, not an Iron Maiden record, although they hadn't put out too many at this point. Not a Judas Priest record, and then whoever else they may call heavy metal. Did Deep Purple ever make it at #1? Did they call Led Zeppelin heavy metal? Probably not. Did Aerosmith, not make it? Whatever. I get it. And the charts were manipulated, and the people who run Billboard are like, no, heavy metal doesn't really sell that much, right? It couldn't be #1. But 6 million in 1983. We just did a show on Journey's Frontiers that sold 6 million in the U.S. in 1983. So it sold about the same amount in the same year. But that album is extraordinary. Could have sold 12 or 15 million copies. This one, I'm shocked that it sold 6 million in the U.S. and about 10 million worldwide. I mean, I get it. The hit single was huge, right? Really big. but it's a cover and it has a history of its own that we have to get into. And I get it. MTV really helped push it over, and on their heels, hey, here comes Def Leppard. Maybe not a heavy metal band, but in the genre, right? I mean, a hard rock band with the long hair and the twin guitar attack, they're coming up here pretty soon. Given how well it's sold, it's just surprising to me. It
so
really
you're saying
is.
After the first 2 tracks, it falls off pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's only one song that isn't bad to me. I mean, that isn't bad. Like, these songs are bad, and Dubrow can't sing for shit. He's either screaming or he's standing there like a sucker,
Yeah.
With his hairline just receding by the minute. I mean, he wore a wig on stage in the late 80s and early 90s. I mean,
I thought he grew all that hair back.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Those were wigs that changed every 2 minutes?
Believe it or not, yeah. So, I mean, and that's not cool. I mean, at least shave it like Rob Halford, Don't wear an obvious wig. But, I mean, it's easy for me to say because I have such gorgeous hair covering up my own male pattern baldness in the back. Which we didn't think I was going to have, but apparently I do.
Yeah, the day I show up here and you're wearing a Louis XIV wig, I think that I might have to go.
Okay, yeah, it's time for me to do my own podcast now,
right.
Blackie.
We have definitely come off the rails at that point.
Appreciate it. All right, before we just start to rip into this, we got to do some history and kind of say, how did the band get to this point in early 1983? That they released this Mental Health record and had this big hit, Come On, Feel the Noise.
Okay. So the first thing that was interesting to me is that this was the follow-up basically to Quiet Riot 2, right? With Randy Rhoads.
Correct.
But that came out in 1978. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to, was there I understand they had a big lineup change, pretty much everybody except for Kevin Dubrow. Was he, in some kind of legal trouble, or what was the deal? Why was there such a big gap in between 78 and 83?
Yeah. So here's the way I understand it. So they formed the band like 73 or something like that. Maybe had some different names. I think Little Women was a name for a while or something like that. But Randy and Dubrow had formed the band, and they were gigging around LA. And I guess they kind of started up kind of a friendly relationship, or also like frenemy kind of relationship with Van Halen, because they were kind of coming up the same way at the same time, playing the same place, playing the Whiskey, playing the Starwood, playing, whatever. In fact, Rudy Sarzo, who was from, he's born in Cuba, when he first went to LA in the 70s, he was trying to get into a Van Halen show at the Whiskey. It was sold out, so he couldn't get in. So he ended up going to Starwood to catch Quiet Riot, and he met Dubrow after the show, and they kind of struck up a friendship. Then he moved to New York, Rudy did, for a little while, and then when they had problems with their bass player, Kelly Garney. Kelly Garney was their bass player. And so they kind of kicked Kelly out of the band, and they put Rudy in the band, and he's on the cover of Quiet Riot 2, the second album, even though I don't think he plays on the album at all. It's all Kelly Garney. But Kelly Garney had a problem with Dubrow. All right, but we'll come to that. So what's really odd to me is that although Van Halen ended up doing pretty well and getting a record contract, and it went gold pretty quickly. Of course, now it's diamond selling, but it became diamond because over the years, more people would discover Van Halen and be like, well, you really got to go hear Eruption. You really got to hear, the first album, and then it sold. I think it did fine the first, but it didn't sell 10 million copies in like 1978, right?
Right. And
because Deep Purple had broken up after their many lineup changes, and Black Sabbath was getting rid of Ozzy, and even Led Zeppelin wasn't really delivering that much anymore, and then Into the Outdoor Beat, not really a hard rock record. A lot of people said heavy metal is dead, and though Quiet Riot was killing it on the Sunset Strip, they couldn't get an American record contract. So their first 2 albums, which I think were 77 and 78, were only released in Japan. And honestly, you can't get it on CD. It still hasn't really officially been released in the U.S. And maybe it's some kind of special product if you can get them both together on a CD, but they've never released it in the U.S. So
it's interesting because because Slick Black Cadillac is on Mental Health, but it's also on Quiet Riot 2. So I said, well, let me go back and listen to the Quiet Riot 2. Could not find it. It wasn't on Apple Music. It wasn't on Spotify. It wasn't anywhere except somebody had a bootleg on YouTube.
On YouTube,
so,
that's right.
Yeah. So that makes sense that you just can't find this record anywhere that's legitimate in the United States.
Right, exactly. So So you can use stuff that you've already recorded because nobody in this country, or in our home country where you are, can get their hands on it. So that's fine. But the fact of the matter is they've got this future guitar god, Randy Rhoads, who's still kind of finding his way. And if you listen to that record, there's a few flourishes of what will become what you'll hear on Blizzard of Oz and stuff like that. But it's not like, this is obvious, he's the next big thing. It's just not like that, you know. And the fact of the matter is, Kelly Garney couldn't stand Kevin Dubrow. Dubrow has this personality that's very confrontational, it's very loud, it's very in your face, and he's pissed off a lot of people over the years. And Kelly Garney apparently one night decided, I got a gun, I'm going to go down to the studio and I'm going to fucking shoot Kevin Dubrow. I'm going to murder the son of a bitch, right?
All right.
So he has too much to drink. He gets a DUI, gets arrested on the way. And then after that, he kind of cools off and he decides not to murder Kevin Dubrow. And then they bring in Rudy to play on the album. Or to do the tour. He did not play on the album. The album's already made. He's on the cover, but he is not on the album. And of course, it doesn't really go anywhere because it's not released in this country. But most of the songs are co-written by Kevin Dubrow and Randy Rhoads. Like they're the writing team. Then Randy goes to join Ozzy Osbourne's band because Ozzy's free from Black Sabbath, so he goes over there, obviously making history in Blizzard of Oz. Eventually, Rudy goes too. So that's half their band. And I think Dubrow tried to keep it going for a while. They said, "Nah, I'll stop it, and I'll do a band called Dubrow. Since I'm a veteran of the Strip, I know how to get this stuff done. I know how to strut around. I know how to write some songs. We're going to try Dubrow." And then for a couple of years, it just doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really make it. So he gets in touch with Randy, who was having success with Ozzy, and says, do you mind if I kind of reanimate the old Quiet Riot moniker for a new band that you're not in? And I guess Randy gave him his blessing, which is cool. It sounds like something Randy would do. And eventually he got Rudy back in the band. And I think a big addition to the band was Frankie Banali on the drums. Frankie is a big time hard rock, heavy metal drummer. He's done a ton of session work over the years. He's really been kind of the guy who kept the Quiet Riot name alive. Like he left at the end of the 80s when everybody else did. And then he was in Wasp for a long time. But if you hear anything about Blackie Lawless or Wasp, he wasn't like a fair partner in that. He was always just getting paid, right?
Correct.
Blackie's the corporation and everybody else just gets paid, right? So eventually he put Quiet Riot kind of back together, the heyday in the late 90s through the early 2000s. And then eventually Kevin died. But Frankie kept it going. He was a great guy, Frankie, by all accounts. So now they've got a killer rhythm section. They pull in Carlos Cavazo, who's kind of a shredder. And, look, in L.A., because of what Randy Rhoads did on Blizzard of Oz, because of what Eddie Van Halen was doing on the first Van Halen album, and then after that, you had to have that tapping, you had to have that shred to be part of that. And he fit it, right? So suddenly they've got a pretty hot L.A. kind of band. And they got signed finally to a major label, and they made Mental Health.
Okay, so that makes sense then with where the gap was. And that actually is pretty cool that Randy would say, hey, go ahead and use it. Although at that point in time, he was fairly successful with Ozzy. So, go ahead and do it.
Basically, remember that beat-up Datsun we used to drive in high school? You mind if I take it for a spin? He's like, don't worry, dude. I got somebody driving me around the
still there. But
exactly.
This is Sunny Hollywood Pooney, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast. Why? Somebody has to. So, because of MTV, they know they're going to have to make some videos and use those as ways to promote the album. And you can't underestimate the value of MTV to Quiet Riot, to Def Leppard in this country, in our country. I mean, this whole episode, I feel, is going to have a lot of back and forth with people who were big in the U.S. but not in the U.K., or big in the U.K. but not in the U.S. This is kind of the epitome show of that, right? Because Quiet Riot was big, at least in 1983, in the United States, and played the US Festival and opened for Black Sabbath on their Born Again tour, featuring Ian Gillan on lead vocals there. And it basically had the classic Sabbath lineup minus Ozzy, because Bill Ward was back in the band after leaving for Mob Rules. But then the US Festival was huge because, Ozzy was there, and Priest was there, and some big hard rock bands were there. It's 100,000, 200,000 people, whatever. So 1983 was a huge year for them. They worked with a guy named Spencer Proffer, and that's not his real name. He has some kind of very East European sounding name. He's from Germany. But he's worked with a lot of people over the years, produced a lot of records, produced a lot of films and film scores and stuff like that. So it does have a fairly slick 80s production value to it. And like when you compare Slick Black Cadillac on this record to Slick Back Cadillac on QR2, I mean, the song's not that different, but the production is totally different. Yeah.
And the intro's a little weird. Yeah. You can tell that was an easy extra track to pick up. Like you said, nobody's heard of this in the United States, so you might as well pull it out, clean it up, and then get it for another single, which I think did they release that as a single?
I don't think they did,
but that's definitely played enough to be, I guess, considered a single.
It's classic. I mean, and they play it to this day. You know, they're never going to not play that, I don't think. Mm-hmm. And then there's the cover, the iconic cover of the dude in the leather jacket. It's supposed to be a straight jacket. I think it's really just a leather jacket kind of turned around with the stuff, the arms tied behind his back. And then the mask. Yeah. I don't know if it's duct tape or tinfoil or a little bit of the both. It kind of became their logo, kind of like Eddie is to Iron Maiden. This was obviously, you see this like, oh, that's Quiet Riot album. And if you look at the next album, Critical Condition, and the QR3 after that features this mask, this iron yet duct tape mask on the guy. So it looks like he's in an insane asylum. He's in a padded cell with the orderly pants on, the black leather jacket, straight jacket, and then this odd mask with one eye like going like I need help kind of thing. Yeah. Metal health versus mental health. See, it's a play on words.
Oh, I see. Very clever. Yeah, no, I remember when it came out. I remember, the image is striking, and I'm sure people had problems with that. We'll get into that a little bit later as far as what the PMRC, I'm sure, thought of what was going on here. But yeah, it definitely was one, I think, where metalhead kids wanted that poster up on the wall too because it looked cool.
It does look kind of cool. I got to say, it's iconic now. I kind of remember at the time, I was still pretty young. I was like 10 when this was hitting charts. And, listen to Michael Jackson, listen to Men at Work, stuff like that. So, although I love Come On Feel the Noise, I seem to remember, there may have been a story, maybe on like Entertainment Tonight or even the Nightly News, who knows, talk about heavy metal and what it does to kids. And here's Quiet Riot causing problems. And I remember my mom saying, like, you don't like that stuff, do you? I'm like, oh, no, Mommy, I don't like that. I'm like, but I kind of do.
Now I'm going to go to my room and be quiet for a little while. And hopefully it comes on the radio. Because it was this one and it was Stay Hungry from Twisted Sister with Dee Snider on the front, who just looked horrendous with that giant bone that he had. And the two of these were pretty synonymous with just the images being something that, parents were like, I don't even want to see this anywhere near you.
You're like, yes, of course, I would never do that. But then like you come on the radio, I'm like, yeah, come on, feel it. That's really cool. All right. So let's go track by track as we always do. Now, I shouldn't say most all. Dubrow writes or co-writes on almost every song except Battle Axe. We'll get to that. And of course, Come On Feel the Noise, which was a cover. Metal Health starts it off, written by Kevin Dubrow, Carlos Cavazo, and Frankie Banali. Second single off the record, not the first. And I find it very accessible. It's got great big, heavy rips, ripping guitar, but it's not insane. But the lyrics are ridiculous. They're ridiculous. I mean, this isn't made for teenagers. This is made for dumb teenagers, and I remember singing along to it. I'm rocking along. Now I look at the lyrics now. I'm like, this is the dumbest.
But it's
moronic. It's not just sophomoric. It's moronic.
But I think it's right down the middle for what they were trying to do. You're right. There's nothing going on here. It's got that killer intro with Frankie, playing the drums. You know exactly what it is. And it's for people to, you're driving in your car and you're yelling, bang your head.
Right.
Mental health will drive you mad. And especially on these first two, the choruses almost seem like they're set up for the crowd to sing it back to them.
Absolutely, yes.
So I mean, I think they knew what they were doing on this one. But you're right, when you listen to what he's actually saying, I've got a mouth like an alligator. I mean, it's not real deep. But I think,
really want to be overrated. Congratulations, you are. I'm not a loser, and I ain't no weeper. Oh God. Did it take you 5 minutes? Did it take you 6? I mean, it's, you could have written this anywhere. I don't know. And the end solo was cool. It has a lot of tapping, a la Eddie Van Halen and maybe a little bit of Randy Rhoads in there. The video is important. The video's the guy in the padded room with the mask on. It's basically the cover. He escapes, gets out, and then you see Dubrow basically wearing what he was wearing, throw the mask out into the crowd like, it was me, I was in the insane asylum. I mean, look, I remember it fondly, and bang your head. It's a fun thing to scream in concert. Mental health will drive you mad. It's iconic. You're not trying to win a Pulitzer Prize with the lyrics. I get it. I did not know that it was carved out of a song called No More Booze, written by Carlos Cavazo when he was in his previous band, Snow. So he reworked the riff or whatever. And, Kevin changed the lyrics to his own. So I didn't know that before doing research for the show.
So can we talk about Carlos for a minute here?
Yeah, I love Carlos.
I saw him in an interview when he was playing with Rat. Mm-hmm. It was him and DeMartini, and they were talking about the songs, and then they would play the songs. And, Cavazo was playing the Robin Crosby rhythm part. Okay. It looked like he could have been doing anything else and playing that. It looked like it was really, really, really easy for him. I think he's a lot better than what he's doing here. I think he's fitting himself into these songs. That's just my feeling on this. He plays exactly what they need on like every one of these songs. But it sounds, and especially on that, we'll get to Battle Axe later, but it sounds like he's basically holding himself back, is what I think on this record.
You may be right about that, Jackson. It does look like he's effortless, and then if he's really showing off, I'm like, how do you play that well when you're just bopping around like that? Why don't you stand still and you can really show us what you're doing? And I don't know. It's like he's not even. I wouldn't say it's not that he's not trying. I don't know. Maybe he was intimidated. Like, I'm filling in. I'm taking the spot once held by Randy Rhoads, so I got to be respectful and do it right. I don't know, but I think he's underrated as a guitar player, but that's because Carlos Cavazo, he was a Quiet Riot. Oh yeah, they had Come On Feel the Noise and Mental Health, and that's about it. And then he did Robin Crosby's parts in Rat, and that's kind of what he's famous for.
Right. It just seems to me if 10 is the limit of what he can play, this is probably like a 4 or 5. Like he's really just trying to. I'd like to see him really go nuts. But I've seen a couple of interviews that he's done just with the Rat one, but also talking about Quiet Riot. He just seems like a really chill dude, like a guy who loves playing the guitar, like more of like a session guy. Like, if you need me to, whatever you need me to play, I can play. You want me to play fast? No problem. Slow, acoustic, chords, no problem. It seems like he does a really good job on this of guiding the song along and not doing too much.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think you're right. And I did meet Carlos once at the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Oh, that's right.
He was super nice. He couldn't have been nicer. He introduced me to his girlfriend, who I'm going to guess her occupation was dancer. And she was really nice. And then he went over to the Rainbow to eat some food. And so I went over to the Rainbow too, but I didn't bother him anyway. But like I said, what was it like being on tour with Quiet Riot? It was like, nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. God bless you, kind of thing. It went to 31 on the American charts. It was backed with Mental Health live, so it's like they didn't even have a lot of B-sides laying around to go with it. But the video I saw was made for $19,000 budget, and basically it was made like at some Disney studio or whatever with a bunch of students as extras, maybe paid, maybe unpaid. Also, of course, the single was cut by about a minute because that's what they do. Like, oh, you can't have a 4.5 minute heavy metal song. You better make it 3.5. So that's just the record company messing with them. But enough about that. Let's get on to track number 2, the big one, the reason we're still talking about this album 40 years later, and that's Come On Feel the Noise. Now,
Curious.
Yeah.
Curious song, because this was giant, but then here you go back with your big on side A, but not on side B. How
Right.
was Slade not a bigger band in the United States?
In the U.S., yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And anytime that happens, I always blame the record company. I blame the A&R guy. Like, somebody fumbled it. They just didn't promote them. They didn't tour them, or they didn't tour them with the right people or something. Didn't get them on TV, whatever it was. Now, I know they're glammy, and glam hit big in America, like in New York and LA. But in the middle, everyone's like, why are they dressed like girls? You know, why are they wearing high heels? Why is one a spaceman and the other looks like a tartan moron? You know, I just don't think it hit with the homeland. And, you know, yeah, like Bowie's big in New York and LA. Was Bowie really big in Oklahoma? I don't know about that, you know. And Mark Bolan, T-Rex, huge in the UK and Europe. Bang a Gong, yeah, okay, yeah, I know that one. Non-existent other than that in the US, right? So I think it was a story of glam. Was Mott the Hoople big in America? No. Was Sweet big? No. Something about the UK, even though they're all buttoned up and prim and proper, they have a soft spot for boys who wear makeup and dress like girls. Even though homosexuality was illegal, you know, like, you can go to jail until like the late 60s. In the 70s, suddenly there are a lot of guys dressing up like girls.
And I don't even think it was so much about being straight or gay. I think it was more, especially in the UK, like you said, everybody is so buttoned up and everybody is so, you know, I get up at this time and I have my coffee and we go blah, blah, blah. And you have this chance to just express yourself a little more, and especially you know with rock and roll, and seeing these dudes who were just crazy, like you think to yourself, man, I want to be, once in my life I just want to be a little crazy. I don't want to wear gray.
Let's have a show, you know. It's entertainment, you know. Correct. So let's do it, you know. And like the New York Dolls were kind of a big thing, but not really much outside of New York. I think they're bigger in the UK than they were in the US. It did lead to Kiss, who we like a lot, but that's a little different because they weren't trying to look like girls. They were trying to look like superheroes kind of thing.
Correct.
But you know, Naughty Holder's a heck of an entertainer. He's weird looking, and that works against you in the US.
Unfortunately for Slade, there was not the guy. Well, maybe no, not really. Any of the guys there that were like the heartthrob, and that's going to hurt you in the United States. But Naughty's got a hell of a voice on him. Yeah,
you know, and he's having fun. You can tell he's an entertainer. And he was on our buddy The Rock on Tours not that long ago. In fact, when we interviewed them on episode 96, they were talking about how excited they were that they were going to get to talk to Naughty Holder, like, you know, not long after talking to us. Like, we don't even want to talk to you guys, but we can't wait to talk to Naughty. You know, that's going to be awesome, you know. So, yeah, Slade's version went to number 1 in the UK, number 1 in Ireland, top 10 all over Europe.
Never heard one time in the United States.
Number 98 on the Billboard Top 100. Okay, so it just didn't hit, you know. And Jim Lee, who I guess was the bass player, and Naughty, they wrote it together. A huge hit for them. A non-album single. It was between albums. It was actually a non-album single, which I always find fascinating. And when he did that on like Top of the Pops or one of those British shows, he had a big top hat that had all these little mirrors on it, you know, so that when he would turn his head, the light would go everywhere. I heard Paul Stanley say that's exactly how I got the idea for my cracked Ibanez mirror guitar.
The Iceman.
Yes, was watching him on TV. He's like, I want a guitar that looks like that, you know.
Interesting.
So that's pretty cool. So huge hit for them in the UK, not at all in the US. And that's probably why Spencer Proffer goaded them into doing it. And they did not want to. And Dubrow was like, we should write all the songs, because he knew what publishing royalties were, and we should get all that. No, try this because, you know, you need something, and it wasn't a hit here, but you can make it a hit here. And they're like, nah, this song sucks. Naughty Holder's voice doesn't align with Kevin's. It's different. So they got together, they huddled up and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play the song. We're going to play the song really badly, and then we're going to forget about the fucking song, okay? He's not going to ask us to do it again. But Frankie went in with those drums, boom, pop, boom, pop, and he's got a little pop on that, and Kevin's like, what are you doing, Frankie? You're making it sound pretty good, you know, kind of thing. And so they did a killer version of it, and obviously it's kind of like the rest is history, because it went up to number 5 and blew this thing up the charts in the summer of '83.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a little more to that story, because apparently so you said Frankie goes in there and just kills it. And he comes out, and Dubrow was like, "What are you doing? I thought we were going to like sandbag this."
Yeah, I know.
And apparently Banali said to him, "Just sing it like shit. You know how to do that." And he walked off.
He's like, yeah, I'm not going to play bad. This is kind of my break, you know?
Yeah,
like,
you want to
sing
tank it, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And a huge video, right?
Yeah.
There's the kid in his bedroom. He's on his bed, and all of a sudden, the music starts coming out louder. And then all of a sudden, his stereo, which is right next to his hand, all of a sudden, it's 8 feet tall. And he's trying to switch the dial. Oh, I can't do it. Meanwhile, the duct tape mask is, hanging on above his bed. Maybe he got it out of the mental health video, who knows? But all of a sudden, it's like he falls down, and then he's on stage next to the band. They're all looking at him like, what the hell are you doing here, kid? And then they play the song live, basically on like a sound stage. There's some people around or whatever. To me, Carlos's solo on this is fantastic. I put it up there, one of the greatest heavy metal, certainly heavy metal pop solos of all time. He's absolutely shredding. And the thing is, he's running back and forth during the thing. I'm like, dude, just stand still. Let me see how you're doing that with your fingers. You're right. It's like it's effortless. It's like I can do whatever I want with this thing, And he kind of proves it on this song.
And for all of if you listen to the rest of this record, Dubrow's voice does not work for everything, and we'll get into that in a minute. But for this song, it's perfect. And it's just, you never heard, because even though, well, no, Mental Health would come next. So this is basically the first time you ever heard him sing.
That's right.
He's got that crazy screaming delivery.
Exactly.
And it works perfectly for this, and the drum intro, exactly what the song is. I know what it is. I turn it up as loud as it'll go and just listen to him scream at me.
And the choruses where they're all screaming along. Mm-hmm. It just encourages you to do the same thing. How many times have you been in your car and you're like, come on, but if you turn the volume down, you're like, whoa, I'm singing that a little loud. Probably shouldn't be doing that. But it's infectious, and killer, I think it was backed with Run for Cover, which is on the second side of the album. Did very well in the US, did well in Canada. It got to 45, I think, in the UK, which, as our friend Neil will tell us, if you can't get in the top 40, then no one's going to know who you are because you're not going to be on top of the pops or whatever, So it didn't really help them. But also, Slade did re-release their own version of it in the UK in 1983.
Okay.
And remember how it only went to 98 in the US in 1973?
Mm-hmm.
Only went to 98 in the UK in 1983. Because you can't do it 10 years later. You kind of got to do it 20 years later. If they did it in 93, it probably would have done fine. But, I don't know if they did it in reaction to Quiet Riot's. Like, okay, well, we don't want them upstaging us with our own song. We'll re-release it and show everybody what the goods are. And then it didn't do as well. I don't know. That seems like a strange decision to me. But they never had success in the U.S. So maybe they were bitter about Quiet Riot having all this success on the back of their song.
Although, you're bitter until those checks start coming in.
Well, that's right, because let me tell you something. Quiet Riot made no money off Come On Feel the Noise, like none. And Frankie even said it, I think, in the Behind the Music. It's like, we had a bad record contract, but look, when you're starving and someone offers you a plate of chicken wings, you take it. You're not thinking, oh, why don't I hold out for the buffet that's in the next room? You're like, no, I'll take the chicken wings, And I'm sure they made some money off the songs they wrote on the album. It sold 10 million worldwide, but not on Come On Feel the Noise. It was like Noddy and Jim Lee got their publishing money for it, and then the record company took everything else and didn't give it to the band. So it may have been a huge hit, but financially, I don't think it helped them that much.
Yeah, and that's got to be tough. That's got to be tough when you see, because you can't be that blind. This thing is selling. Hey, wait a minute. Everybody involved with this is making money except for me. That's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah, and when you're kind of a one-hit wonder, and I'm sorry for huge Quiet Riot fans, but this went to number 5 in the U.S. Nothing else ever broke the top 20. So that means you're a one-hit wonder. And if your one hit doesn't get you paid, that kind of sucks. And the fact of the matter is, Frankie said that he went to London. They invited the guys to the show with a limo and everything. Never heard back from them. He bumped into Jim like in the market or something like that and said, hey, thanks for, the song. Thanks for writing a hell of a song. And then went to shake his hand, and the guy just walked away from him. So he's like, well, okay. So I think it showed, they were a little bit bitter that they had made in their, big with their own song. but he still got paid for it. I wouldn't be that bitter about it.
And
That's
then
just me.
Yeah, and then they went ahead and did it again on the next record on Critical Condition. They did "Mama, We're All Crazy Now,"
Yeah.
which I mean that was I mean it wasn't close to what they did with "Come On Feel the Noise," but I remember that coming out again.
Sure.
So I mean, obviously they weren't that. I think they were trying to strike gold again.
It was the biggest hit off Condition Critical. Absolutely,
correct.
It was. Yeah. But look, for another band that's absolutely enormous in the UK and just did fine in America, Oasis. Oasis did a killer version of Come On Feel the Noise, man. It was originally part of the promotion single for Don't Look Back in Anger.
Okay.
And I think there's a live version of it. They did it at Main Road, but I do believe there's the studio version that was one of their many, many killer B-sides from over the years. But that was probably a bigger hit and a B-side than was Quiet Riot's version of it. I just remember the video being huge. I remember it being on the radio. I didn't realize they took like a minute and a half out of the single version versus the album version. But I mean, look, when I made my adrenaline mix, my 1992 adrenaline mix that I would put in my Walkman, because I still used to run 30 years ago, for fun, for like exercise. Like, I'll just go run for 45 minutes. Like, you think you're going to get me to do that now? Dinosaur could be chasing me. I'm like, nah, fuck it, just leave me, dude. I'm not running.
It's been a good life. Just go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not running for anything. But that was definitely on there because you can't, it just pumps you up, man. It's just automatically, you're running faster.
Absolutely. And one that's designed. I mean, what was even pseudo live in the video. I mean, just when you want to hear live, when you want to yell back the chorus to the band.
And then Rudy's playing his bass. He flips his hand over on the other side of it. He's fun visually. He may not have written any of these songs, but he played on almost all of them, and he certainly played on this one. He did not play on Mental Health, and he didn't play on Don't Want to Let You Go, which is the next one. Chuck Wright, who had been in the band for a while but just wasn't a perfect fit, and is a very talented bass player in his own right. He's played for a lot of people, done a lot of session work over the years, and I believe he was back in Quiet Riot for a while over the last decade and a half. Now Rudy's back in the band in the current incarnation, which I guess they're touring on the 40th anniversary, but I mean, Dubrow is not with us anymore. Frankie's not with us anymore. Carlos is doing something else. So he's the only holdover from the heyday, kind of thing. But hey, people want to see him and they want to do it. Let him go tour. All right. So those are the two big ones, Jackson. Now let's get to the rest of the story. All right. So you kick it off hard, you take it up a notch for the second one. Third number's got to be a gear change. Don't Want to Let You Go.
Yes.
Okay.
This is an interesting song because it's very different. It doesn't have the Frankie Banali drums. It's got the chords at the beginning of it.
Yep.
This sounds like this should have been somebody else's song.
Yep.
My big thing on this one is Dubrow does not fit into this. Like, his vocal delivery is just wrong for this song.
My notes say, this doesn't suit Dubrow's voice. He's not a crooner. He's a shouter. That's what he does, And the production is very early 80s to me. Like, I know exactly when they recorded this. Like, I might know the day. Like, it was at November 15th, 1982. I could tell. And, the guitar is a little tinny to me. And the solo is not super special. And they have a little keyboard on here. Not a member of the band, but credited on the album with some keyboard stuff is a guy named Pat. I think it's either Regan or Reagan. I'm not sure. But no, this is not a good Quiet Riot song. This is not good for Kevin's voice. It's very, very, very dated to me. It couldn't have been made in 1984. It's so dated. Like, it is. This is the only time this could come out, and to me, it's not great.
Yeah, so I've got this one. Sounds generic. Could have been any 80s band. Catchy but cheesy. Keyboards are not helping. So yeah, it sounds like very of the time. And
I love keyboards are not helping.
Well, it's not helping it be anything other than, like you said, 1982. Like, it's just, there's really nothing special about this. This would have been, if you had somebody else in the band that could sing, this may have been a good other guy's song.
Yep.
And give Dubrow a rest on this.
Someone should have given it a rest, that's for sure. But I mean, I understand you need a gear changer after those two big ones.
Correct.
And then you're coming in with fourth, Slick Black Cadillac, which is a big fist pumping song. It's about cars. Yeah, here we go.
Right.
But that song just doesn't fit. Now, yeah, Slick Back Cadillac versus the 1978 QR2 version, it's not that different. The opening is definitely different.
Yeah.
But the production is different. My notes on the production were, let's see, what is it? It's like the first one was cheap late 70s production versus slick early 80s production. That's the difference between the two songs, really. And although I'm trying to give Randy, I'm going to like the Randy version better than the Carlos version, I can't say that I necessarily do because he doesn't really show a whole lot of flash that makes me think, oh, he's going to go do Blizzard of Oz soon. It's basically the same song.
Right, and I went back thinking that exact same thing. Well, I'm going to hear the Randy solo on the 78 version. Here we go, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and just for one moment, very quickly, on the cover of Quiet Riot 2.
Oh God,
what on God's earth is he wearing?
Well, it's not even so much what he's wearing. Yeah, he's wearing a polka dot bow tie, and he was so skinny and little. and maybe was it some suspenders, and no shirt?
Yeah.
But here's what's more troubling to me, Jackson, is that they're in a locker room, and there's some great big football guys getting dressed around them, and then they're in their poncy little 70s outfits. They're all scrawny, and there's these big, huge guys who don't seem to mind that they don't even notice that they're there. But it's like, but why are they there? Like, what's the point of them being there? And it's not like, there was a theme to it, like, well, this is called the locker room. This is called backstage, or, something. It's just called Quiet Riot 2. I'm like, it didn't make any sense. I'm like, did it make sense in Japan because it was released there? Because it doesn't make sense to me 45 years later.
Maybe. Yeah, there was a theme there somewhere that they all agreed to. But yeah, what that is, unfortunately, everybody in that photo shoot or the people that you'd want to talk to are gone now. So it's lost to history. But yes, very interesting. Yeah. Are they going to play the halftime? Are they getting ready for the thing, for the game? Are they just watching them change? What's going on there? Yeah, very strange.
Yeah. Don't want to let you go. Carlos and Kevin wrote that together. But this is one that Randy wrote with Kevin back in the day. And obviously he reworked it and updated it a little bit here. In the 70s version, it kind of begins with a groove, kind of a funky thing until it breaks into the big riff. Whereas this one, there's an acapella start to it with him singing, and then boom, here comes that big driving riff. It's a good rocker. Makes me feel like a king.
Right.
I only need one thing, and that's a slick black. Pull over,
ahead.
Right? It pull over right before he does the solo. It ends with honking and a very 80s wind out kind of a thing. It's a little long. It's kind of one of those, because at the end, like, okay, let's take it up now. We're doing swing black. And they would kind of keep doing that over and over again. It was, how long was it? It was 4:13. God, it felt like it was 5.5 minutes. They probably could have cut that one down a little bit. But hey, look, it's a fun song. It's a rocker. It's about Cadillacs and cars. And as far as this album goes, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's definitely third best on the record.
Yes. And now the fifth song on the first side, Love's a Bitch.
Right. Now,
I understand that that's kind of a sentiment that we've all kind of felt from one time or another. And I mean, technically the Stones had a song called Bitch, and the chorus was love. It's a bitch. So, it's not unprecedented for to sing like that, but the execution is just kind of poor, and it starts with Dubrow. He's moaning or screaming very slowly at the beginning.
He can't not do that.
Love's a Bitch, baby. This is not a good song.
It's okay, but hold on a minute, because it's the acoustic intro. Like when you hear that was the model for a lot of stuff that would come after it, including Dawkins' Alone Again. I'm like, they used this thing as a blueprint for a lot of 80s, kind of like your ballady, cheesy song on there, the sentimental side. It would have been a lot better had they taken out that beginning screaming part. Like, just let him play the acoustic guitar for a minute. I have to come in right now. Okay, it's been like 13 seconds. Relax. Go sit in the corner. And I think that's probably Dubrow's Achilles heel is he can't be quiet and he can't be sitting in the corner. Look at me all the time. This is my show. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me.
Yeah, he's a lot like David Lee Roth in some respects. You know, he's got a big mouth. He can't wait to talk shit about everybody.
Right.
He's more of an entertainer than an artist.
Yeah.
And he relies on some hooks and kind of old adages versus coming up with something original. You know, Love's a Bitch. Everyone's heard that, right? Run for Cover. Right. Everyone's heard that. You know, this is a song he wrote on his own. And I think the song sucks. And it's kind of heavy, sure, but it really just kind of plods. It's not so much heavy as it kind of drags to me. And despite the fact, I do like what you're saying about the beginning, what Carlos is playing in the beginning. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Ronnie James Dio when he's doing where he's got the acoustics like, we are coming, like they go from that to the other, but no, and the solo's not good. I mean, this is just like end of the first side. Can we flip this, please? This is, it's moronic. It's just not that good of a song. And here's the thing. It's funny because it actually in in '83 in November, I think it was, it replaced Synchronicity at the top of the charts. Right. It was only there for a week, and then Lionel Richie's Can't Slow Down came and bumped it off. Well, I had Synchronicity and Can't Slow Down on cassette. I didn't have this on cassette because, of course, my mom didn't want me to have it. So, I mean, again, I didn't listen to this until I was older, really all the way through. I mean, I had friends who had it, but then we would usually listen to the first two songs, and then we'd listen to something, then we'd pop the tape out and put in something else, right? So I didn't realize how bad a lot of this was until later in life. But that's side one, and if you didn't like side one, you're not going to like side two, folks. Here we go. Okay. Breathless. No, wait. Yes. Breathless starts off, and it's a bit of a runner, right? Okay. You know, it's better than the last.
Reminds you of who?
Iron Maiden.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, this definitely sounds like they were trying to do something a little different. Even the guitar solo where he comes in sounds like he's trying to sound like Iron Maiden. It's not a great song, but at this point in time, it's a nice change of pace on this record.
Yeah, it's not that bad. No, I kind of like it. You know, you take my breath away, you leave me breathless. It's better, you know, on the chorus when they're all together. I think Carlos does better than he did on the last couple tracks. You know, and I think Frankie's killing it on this one. I think maybe Carlos is trying to channel a little Randy Rhoads on this one a little bit, but not necessarily Randy from Quiet Riot, Randy from Blizzard.
Correct, yeah.
Not quite at the same level, but he's trying, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Dubrow screaming at the start is gimmicky. I mean, it's like the song could be fine without you doing that, man. It's not a bad one. He and Carlos wrote this together as they did the next one, Run for Cover. It's a good way to start the second side.
Yeah, I've got a note on here. Dubrow has to scream at the beginning, has to underline. I mean, was that one of the things where it was like, okay, we're going to go into, okay, well, I need to start this thing. Okay, again, come on. Can we not for just, well, I guess not. All right.
Nope. Okay. But, you know, it's a highlight on side two. Next is Run for Cover, which is the B-side to Come On Feel the Noise. Now, this is fast-paced.
Right.
Fits fine on the album, but it's not a very good song.
Yeah, it's kind of generic. The drums kind of sound like Bang Your Head again. The intro there, it's straight ahead. Yeah, you better get yourself running. I got a hurricane coming. Okay. Yeah. Although one line that I did write down that I do love is, you think it's easy being this sleazy. That is hard work. And so good for you for doing that.
Well done, Kevin. We're all so proud of you. Look, they play it well, and Frankie has a flourish at the end that I really think is kind of cool. But Dubrow is just a clown on this song to me, man. I mean, like, that's a clown question, bro. Like, that's clown singing, bro. I mean, his lyrics are so dumb and bad, and then he executes them, I guess, the way he has to. I guess this appealed to some people, but this has B-side written all over it to me.
And I think it was. Yeah, I think this is one of those songs that you could you're listening to it just to hear the music. Like you're right. The drum flourish near the end of it is great, but the lyrics are just kind of what makes it not an instrumental, I guess. Like you're not really listening to it to say, oh, this is deep. Yeah, it's just a guy singing words that fit into the song that rhyme.
Right.
And so that's about as deep as that gets.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not real memorable. Now, eighth song, or third on the second side, Battle Axe. This is a guitar solo for Carlos Cavazo. I gotta believe, it's not exactly Eruption, but is it kind of trying to be that a little bit?
Yeah.
And I hear a little bit of Ace Frehley in there. I hit a little bit of Eddie Van Halen, and then Carlos. It's kind of cool. I mean, I like a good guitar solo, and it's short. It's minute 40 seconds or something like that. To me, the real highlight is that Dubrow's not singing on it.
It doesn't ever get overwhelming. It sounds like there's a little bit maybe of classical in the classical influence in the middle there. Again, maybe trying to be like Randy. I don't know. What I wrote down is the tone sounds good and he's got a good feel. It never gets, he knows how to play it fast and then bring it down. He's not just noodling for a minute and 38.
Right.
I think I would have liked it better had it been a true instrumental with, maybe you put a little bass, a little guitar in there, kind of like an Eruption where, at the beginning with the drums. But it's nice. It's a nice change of pace, and it's nice that they kept it very short. I don't want to hear 4.5 minutes of this.
Yeah, it's not incredible. It's good, and it gives Carlos a little time to shine, and I'm all for that. And it gives Dubrow a chance to go do a line or whatever he's going to go do. But yeah, I'm glad he's not ruining it. But Carlos wrote that. The last two are Dubrow solo penned tracks. Let's Get Crazy. Okay, well that sounds like a heavy metal or hard rock song to me, right? Let's Get Crazy. And what do we start with? A big riff and a big yell from Dubrow. Have we heard that before on this record? Yes. The answer is yes. We hear it about every song.
Now, the other nice thing at the beginning of this is the gong. And is that one of those like, hey, fellas, I bought this thing. And so I really think I need to use it at least one time. You know what, Frankie? Go ahead and just bang that thing. You're fine.
It's so simple, and I think it's supposed to be hookish, but it's a pretty simple song. Simple bass, on there. Get down. Let's get crazy. Yeah, it's a simple. I mean, anybody could have written this, right?
Correct. I really don't know what he was trying to get to on this one. There's one lyric in here that I don't know how closely Tipper Gore listened to this record, but probably would have had a heart attack if she heard "Wanna Kiss Your Lips, Not the Ones on Your Face." Wow.
Gee,
okay.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. All righty. This is right down the middle. This is, and I think maybe that's the magic of this record is that it's right down the middle. There is we're not trying to nuance anything here. No. It's for a Come On Feel the Noise was a huge hit for MTV, but the rest of this is for 16, 17-year-old dudes. That's who this is for. To play in your room with the headphones on or driving around in the car that you wish was a Camaro, but probably wasn't. It was probably a Chevy Nova or something on the cassette deck. That's what this is for.
But then again, dude, when we're talking about, we just did Frontiers within the last month. Frontiers is chock full of hits, sold about the same number in America as this did. Shocking. Not to mention, a few months after this comes out, Kill 'Em All by Metallica comes out. Now, the general public wasn't ready for Kill 'Em All. They wasn't ready for Metallica yet, right? But that's where metal was going. So this is like, I don't know, it's like you're holding on to something that's just not there anymore. It's like, I know Crew were huge in the early 80s on the Strip, and, the Strip was full of all sorts of people, and eventually you get Guns N' Roses who were talking about not easy being sleazy.
Yeah.
They kind of perfected that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's the weird conundrum about this record. It was so big in '83. Why weren't they big after this? And I think it was just everything lined up correctly for them, and they almost did well in spite of themselves, because they did not go on to. I mean, the next record didn't match this at all, and then they kind of just fell apart. So it was a very brief moment in time that they hit on all cylinders.
Well, it's because of Dubrow, I guess. I mean, he was very vocal, and he would go out and trash other bands. He would trash the musical press. He trashed Ozzy once Rudy came back to the band, pissed Ozzy off so bad that Ozzy punched Rudy in the face at the US Festival. Like,
who would
Rudy's the sweetest guy there is,
yeah.
dude. Like, even Sharon isn't mad at Rudy, you know.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. And so, yeah, they all kind of say that Condition Critical, which got very bad reviews, they all say it wasn't that bad, but because Kevin was out burning all these bridges and pissing everybody else.
It just never had a chance.
It never had a chance. And it was almost like a Spinal Tap kind of review. It's like, one review was like Condition Terminal, you know, like these guys are done, you know, kind of thing. So, you know, but I mean, look, this is not an uncommon story where you have one album, one song really hits the charts. It's huge. It defines a summer, or it's big for 6 months or whatever to a certain generation. And then they're gone. And then they never really do anything again. And before we get into what happened to Quiet Riot later, let's wrap it up with, the 10th song of the record is Thunderbird, which is something that Kevin wrote about Randy Rhoads. And I think he started writing it before Randy died, but maybe he finished it after he died.
Okay.
Which, it was a tribute to him. It's like fly away, maybe we'll see you again. Someday you'll be back home, fly away to your new home across the bay. That could be about, you're changing bands and you're moving on, that's fine. But then all of a sudden he's dead. It takes on different meaning. Starting off the song,
yes,
I thought it was somebody else singing.
Okay. Somebody who was good at singing?
Well, yeah, he's not screaming, and it just didn't sound like him, because I've heard him in interviews, and it didn't sound like, it's almost like he's whispering kind of thing. It just didn't sound like Dubrow, so it must be somebody else, right? But then eventually there's choruses, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's him.
Yes.
I don't know. Look, it's not a terrible way to end the album, to be honest with you.
This is another one of those where I wish they could have had somebody else, because somebody else singing, because that low part, it's not good. It's just, he's trying to do something that he's not comfortable with, that lower register.
Right.
It sounds bad. They should have had somebody else sing the beginning of this and then let him come in on the chorus. Yeah. Where he's up higher, that sounds fine. The beginning of this is terrible.
They don't have anyone else.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem here, is that he's trying to do everything, and this just doesn't fit. The song isn't bad. It's about Randy, and so that kind of takes it up a couple notches. But his singing at the beginning just takes me out of this thing.
No, you're right. He's horrible. Just so bad, But it's not a terrible way to end the album, whereas half of the other songs on here would have been a terrible way to end the album, because they're terrible. So, it's nice that they kind of have this tribute, and then you kind of right off there, and that's fine. Something that surprised me was the song Danger Zone, I guess, was from this time. It was unreleased. It wasn't a B-side or anything like that. It didn't make the album. It's actually a pretty cool song. I think it's better than at least half the songs on the record. And it's something that they did play live quite a bit. So why didn't this make the record? Why wasn't it a B-side? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
The other thing I thought that was strange on this one is, I guess it was finished, but never released. But the chorus on it sounds really weird. It sounds like two guys yelling in the corner instead of that big chorus where everybody sings to. It's like, just sounded weird. Like they kind of just put that in, like maybe you were going to do something else, but that was like you're just going to hold the place and then we'll put something big in there. I don't know. It's not a bad song compared to everything else. It just doesn't sound 100% finished to me.
Yeah, you're right. Compared to the big chorus shout-alongs on Slickback by Cadillac or Come On Feel the Noise or Mental Health, it does sound a little odd. Like maybe somebody else was singing it or something like that.
Right.
And maybe Chuck Wright sang on it, because he did some backing vocals on Condition Critical. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's weird to me that they didn't include it somewhere, and it was kind of just out in the ether there for the longest time, but you can hear it, and I encourage people to do so. But yeah, Condition Critical comes out the next year, 1984. Like, we're not waiting. Like, we're getting you right back out there, right?
Right.
And, again, Kevin Dubrow writes at least half of the songs, maybe more, on his own. There's a little bit that he works with Carlos on a few songs. Frankie co-wrote Condition Critical. Rudy co-wrote Scream and Shout with them. And obviously Mama, We're All Crazy Now was Naughty and Jim again. And that was their big hit. But, I think the video was fine. And Party All Night had a bit of a video that was kind of fun. But I think people were past it. Like, these guys really aren't that good. And the industry's like, Kevin Dubrow's just not cool. He kind of sucks. He's just kind of a mouthy asshole. It did go up to number 15. in the U.S., and it did sell over 1 million copies. So it went platinum.
Okay,
but after
well,
selling 10 million worldwide, 6 million in the U.S., and a top 5 hit, to have 1 million U.S., it's definitely a letdown.
right. Which I mean, that's always. I mean, even we were talking about Frontiers. That was what would have been a letdown from Escape. It's always going to happen when you have that one big one. But yeah, to drop off that much, and to have somebody who obviously doesn't want to play the game and just wants to be an ass all the time, you can't. Yeah, you can't do that.
Musician reviewer J.D. Considine wrote simply, "Prognosis terminal." Not condition critical. Prognosis terminal.
Well, and I think the other problem too is, by this point in time and then moving forward, you had guys who were in this same vein but could write way better songs.
Right.
So then it's like, we don't even really need you anymore.
And
thank you for showing us the way.
Know,
correct. Yeah.
I mean, it's not even close, And then by the time QR3 came out in '86, I didn't know it came out. I mean, I had no idea. And it didn't make any kind of a dent anywhere, and it's not very well regarded. And then I think Chuck Wright was kind of back in, the band. Like Rudy had split at this point. I don't know, was he already in Whitesnake? I don't know. He was doing other stuff. So they had their moment in the sun, and then it kind of ended. And they tried it for a while into the '90s. Then they kind of broke up for a while. Then they got the classic band back together again. But Kevin didn't live super long. The interesting thing I heard was that they were paid to play the after party by Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson was doing big shows at the time, and he's going to have an after party, so he pays Quiet Riot to play his after party. I'm like, ooh, how the mighty have fallen, dude. My goodness gracious.
But you didn't say no.
No, because, they probably paid. I mean, look, Frankie, again, the trip that I met Carlos Cavazo on, I basically bumped into Frankie at LAX and walked past him, and I said, hey, Frankie, hey, Metal Man. He's like, hey, dude, because he was on the phone. I was like, yeah, dude, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, get out of my face. No, he's a super nice guy, but he kept Quiet Riot alive. And, he got his wife or his fiance at the time to kind of help fund a documentary of them at the time, like in the mid 2015, 2016 era, where he decided he wasn't going to continue with Quiet Riot after Kevin died. But then he said, okay, this is probably my best shot to kind of continue to work. So he went to Kevin's mom, asked her for permission to continue. She granted it to him. And then they kind of went about trying to find a singer. Just like all these bands from the 80s, whether it's Judas Priest or Journey or whoever it is, you gotta look on YouTube and you gotta try to get guys. And they got a guy who was not bad. He was a house painter most of the time, but he had not a bad voice. And so they show him doing flyaway gigs and doing state fair gigs and stuff like that. But the guy just he would drink maybe a little bit too much, and he would mess up the lyrics, and they showed him at a show, he's flubbing Come On Feel the Noise. And it's like, and after the show, Frankie's yelling. I'm like, what the fuck did I tell you? There's one song you can't fuck up that you have to get right every night. It's Come On Feel the Noise, all right? You want to fuck up Slick Black Cadillac? No one's going to know. You can't fuck up, and so he didn't last very much longer. But they kind of just kept it going. And so that's what happens when you have one huge hit. You keep it together enough, as far as your health goes, you can keep going. But Kevin Dubrow died, and he died partying. And he was not in bad shape. He was still pretty ripped, still banging out girls half of his age. They say it was a cocaine overdose, but from what I understand, it's not like he had a ton of cocaine in his system. He had a little bit of alcohol. He had a little bit of cocaine. I think he had some painkillers, maybe he has a back issue or knee issue, something like that. And that little mix in the 50s, put him out.
Yeah, and you're right. I remember right before he died, thinking or when he died, thinking that same thing. I mean, like, yeah, he seemed like he was in really good shape. He seemed like he could still sing and the whole deal. So yeah, I guess it's unfortunate, but yeah, your body can only handle so much, and when you push it over, that's it.
And that's kind of the way his brother described it. His brother is a big time plastic surgeon in Los Angeles. I mean, big time, like to the stars, and He's been on lots of reality TV shows like on E! With like, showing some of the work he does and stuff like that. Plus, I think his wife got on one of those Real House horror shows or whatever because, they probably live a very, very good life. But like he went to Yale and then got his medical degree at UCLA, like smart guy. And Kevin wasn't dumb. He was savvy about a lot of things. It's just he couldn't get out of his own way. He couldn't help himself as much as he thought he could.
And I think that's part of the problem is you have this big hit record and then you go and play that US festival. And
right.
I don't think they were headliners, but they were on the Rock Day. I mean, that's that whole thing. I mean, you just have to think to yourself, okay, this is it. I've made it now. Now I am a rock star. It's only going to get bigger from here. And then, your mouth kind of gets in the way. Hey, it's just me being me. Well, you do have to play the game. And when that second one doesn't follow up like the first one, now we've got a problem.
That's right. Yeah. And that's probably going to happen to you one day, Jackson, because I'm going to run my mouth. I'm going to say something stupid. We're going to have this nice podcast that we like to do. We're meeting people from all over the world and interviewing some of our heroes. And it's going to go away. What happened? Well, Max said something stupid one day and then it was all over. Well, that's our take on Quiet Riot's 1983 juggernaut, Mental Health, which was huge, guys. It was the first ever album to go to #1 of the heavy metal genre in the United States of America. And I know for some fans out there, it sounds like, Mac, you didn't really like that one. And I don't know. Look, I mean, I love the riffs. I love the individuals in Quiet Riot as people and as musicians. And as someone who thinks that heavy metal is overlooked or marginalized by the people who run the music industry or most music fans, because I don't think they appreciate the musicianship of what most metal bands can do. I don't think they understand the lyrics that some of them can bring to the table, like an Iron Maiden. Like, what can they do as far as playing their instruments goes? What kind of stories do they tell? I think it uplifts the entire genre. And while some of the riffs on this Quiet Riot album were pretty cool, the musicianship, I especially think Frankie Banali was top-notch on this thing. It's just their lyrics are so sophomoric. It's so, I mean, if people are going to find a reason to not like heavy metal, they can point to this and say, look at this. Look how poor this is, Now, look, 1983, I'm 10 years old. It's fun. The song Come On Feel the Noise, though it was a cover, was huge. It's a lot of fun. You can scream to it. You can put your fist in the air. You can jam it while you're driving in the car. It's a fun song. It's not Quiet Riot's song, right? It's not a Holder's song. But look, it was a moment in time, and after that, you didn't hear a whole lot from Quiet Riot anymore, and I think that we know why for the most part. But they have a special little place in the history of rock and roll, and a special little place in our heart, and that's why we, at the 40th anniversary of Mental Health, decided to review that record. So we want to know from you, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You let us know. You can email us, uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can also tweet or DM us at ugly_werewolf or at actionjack72. We're on Instagram as well. We're on YouTube. We might be on Facebook. I'm not really sure. There's a lot of things up in the air that I'm not really sure of these days, guys. So I just hope everyone's doing well out there. We really appreciate you listening to the show. And if you're doing it, hey, if you're downloading and subscribing, do us a favor, yeah? If you got a minute, give us a positive review wherever you get your podcast. It just helps us find more and more rock and roll fans like you, helps us grow the show. Special thanks as always to Pantheon Pods. You can go to pantheonpodcast.com to check out the many, many fantastic shows on Pantheon. Thanks as always to rarevinyl.com, where if you use the code podcast, you can save 10% off your orders, and they ship all over the world. So if you're looking for some rare Quiet Riot stuff, maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to find it at rarevinyl.com, and you might as well use the code podcast to save yourself 10%. I'm not sure what's coming next week, folks. I know that we've got a lot of fun things lined up, and we've recorded some stuff, but some stuff we're going to back burner, and some stuff we're going to do new and bring it up to the front and get it out to you quicker. So I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. You are going to have to tune in to find out. But until then, to all of you rockers all around the world, be cool and stay safe.